It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, the Prime Minister says he'll be leaving Downing Street with pride. In his final broadcast interview before he hands over the keys to number 10, Sir Keir Starmer tells Sky News he will now spend more time with his family after they asked him to be around more.
I go with pride. I go knowing that I leave the country in a better state than I found it, and I go knowing I've left the foundation for Labour to win the next general election.
On his final foreign trip of his premiership, Sir Keir Starmer also said he believes Ukraine will win the war with Russia, promising President Zelensky that support for Kyiv will not waver. Also ahead, calls for FIFA to punish Argentina over a Falklands banner at the World Cup. The UK backs calls for an investigation after several Argentinian stars celebrated their win over England with a banner in support of their country's claims to the Falklands will get the reaction from a veteran. Plus, after a long campaign, the mother of Jules Sweeney, Ellen Room, is told the inquest into her son's death will be reopened to allow for the examination of social media evidence. We'll speak to Ellen later in the show. And the government are told that all teenagers around the age of 15 should now be offered a free vaccine against meningitis B. We'll have the details for you. All of that to come and much more on the UK Tonight. And we'll get more on that in a moment. But first, let me take you to Washington, because a US military insider has told Sky News Donald Trump's repeated denials that the US was responsible for the bombing of a primary school in Iran are undermining the official investigation. He was speaking to Sky News as part of a major investigation into the attack on the first day of the Iran war that left 156 people, including 120 school children, dead. Our US correspondent Mark Stone is in Washington, where he's just got reaction to our investigation from the White House.
Mark Stone from Sky News. Can I switch to Iran, please?
Sure.
And specifically, the Manab school attack. 120 children dead, 26 of their teachers. A Sky News investigation released today points to all this being a tragic mistake by America, by the US military. So could you explain, please, why the president is repeatedly saying it wasn't America, when he hasn't actually, he says also that he hasn't even seen the report?
I can't speak to the Sky News investigation respectfully because I have not read it. All I can speak to is what the president has said as I speak on his behalf, and the investigation continues, and we would defer you to the Department of War for further questions on it.
Do you mind following up, if I may?
Sure.
I just want to
My
understand.
answer's not going to change.
I just want to understand why he consistently says it wasn't us, we didn't do this, when all the evidence and indeed the preliminary report, and we've spoken to a military insider who says this was human error.
Well, that's the president's opinion, and at the very same time, he has said the Department of War is investigating the matter, and we would defer you to them for any questions with respect to the investigation, which obviously has not been released yet. I would defer you to them for further questions on it. But there's been, I think the president feels that way because he knows that our military always acts in good faith and absolutely never targets civilians or children, unlike the other side of this conflict, Iran, who is well known for killing women and children and innocent people in their country for a very long time. So you should focus on that in your reporting.
Well, our US correspondent Mark Stone joins us now from the White House. So, Mark, what's your reading here? The White House continuing to deflect?
Yeah, very much so, notwithstanding the fact that, as I mentioned in the question there, we have spoken to numerous different people. We've spoken to military sources within the military. We've spoken to whistleblowers. We've spoken to people who have a deep understanding of what happened with this airstrike that was on day one of the war. And all the evidence points to this being a tragic mistake by the Americans. Not only that, but it is clear, too, from a military source I've spoken to, that they believe that Donald Trump's continued denials, we didn't do this, it might not have been us, that actually is undermining the investigation process because it's making it harder for those subordinates, those underneath Donald Trump, to be able to release the truth of what happened, because the Commander-in-Chief is consistently denying it and they can't be seen to contradict him. That's my reading of what people have been telling us. This is all part of a wider investigation. Dominic Waghorn has been to Minab, that town in southern Iran, near the Strait of Hormuz. He has spoken to the families, the mothers and fathers of those children who died. The interviews are visceral, they are heartbreaking. And they want to know what happened. They want some sense of closure. They want to know why that school was attacked. All the details, all that we have learnt, stuff that the American administration will not tell anyone, is in that film. So you can go and watch it and then make up your own mind. What was also striking is Caroline Levitt said to me, I haven't seen the Sky News investigation. Well, we should make clear that we sent a right of reply to CENTCOM in Tampa in Florida. That's the part of the military that's prosecuting the war in Iran. We sent it to the Pentagon, the Department of War. We sent it to the Defense Intelligence Agency, and we sent it to the White House. All but two of those deferred us to the White House. The Pentagon and the White House, the White House have not responded at all. So Caroline Levitt has had a detailed view of what we are claiming in our report on her desk, in her email. But her view, speaking on behalf of the President, is that it is his opinion that this was not an American airstrike.
OK, Mark, really appreciate the update. And you can watch our special documentary, Iran, School Bombing, The Search for Truth, at 9 o'clock this evening, right here on Sky News. So do stay with us for that. Next tonight, the Prime Minister's final broadcast interview of his premiership. Sir Keir Starmer has told Sky News he'll be leaving Downing Street with pride, and he says he'll now spend more time with his wife Victoria and his 2 children. He also insisted that he did do enough to prepare for his time in office, despite his former Chief of Staff saying Labour were not ready for power. Well, the Prime Minister was speaking in Ukraine on his final international trip, where he told President Zelensky that the UK support for Kyiv would not waver. Our political editor, Beth Rigby, sat down with Keir Starmer.
Prime Minister, you're here in Ukraine today. This is your last big act as Prime Minister. What's your message to President Zelensky as you prepare to stand down?
My message to President Zelensky is one I delivered at the press conference, but I'd also delivered privately to him. And that is that the UK commitment to Ukraine will not waver. We will be there for as long as it takes and a long time afterwards. And it was really important as I stepped down that I told that to President Zelensky, and I wouldn't have said it publicly if I hadn't had the opportunity to talk it through with him privately. And I'm absolutely confident that the UK support will not waver.
You also said something you haven't said before today. You said you now believe Ukraine can win this war. You haven't said that before.
I believe Ukraine will win this war. I think that the last 6 months have been a real turning point, because at the beginning of the conflict, everybody assumed that Russia would win within a matter of weeks. We are now in year 5, and what has happened in that time is Ukraine has begun to push back on the front this year. I remember the early days seeing their capability to now world-leading capability. What they've shown is that it's not just the size of your army, it's how you fight a modern conflict. And so they are probably the most effective fighting machine in Europe.
PM, you've spent a lot of time on foreign affairs. You care deeply, clearly, about Ukraine. You've worked very hard with Zelensky and Macron. You're clearly leaving office before you are ready. You would not have chosen to go now. Why have your MPs rejected you after such a short time? Well,
the way I look at this is not just the 2 years we've had in government, but the 6.5 years that I've been on the front line. I took over the leadership of the Labour Party early in 2020. We had just lost the 2019 election. That was the worst election result for the Labour Party since 1935, and most people thought the Labour Party is finished, it'll never win again. So for the parliamentary party, the question who was the right person to save our party to take it to victory in a general election and the second biggest majority ever of a Labour government. That's answered. I've answered that question. They're now asking the question, who's best to take us into 2029? Yeah. They've given the answer to that question.
Do you think if you'd stayed on, you could have won the next election? Labour could have won with you as the leader?
I've always believed we would win the next election, but the decision about who's best placed to take us into 2029 is a decision the parliamentary party has taken. I accept it in good grace.
So you sort of almost had to put your own ego aside a bit in that moment?
I think it was very... I've always said country first, and I've always meant country first, and that means in the end I felt I had to take the decision what was in the best interest of the country. And I don't... and I do that with good grace because that is what I've lived by. That is the right thing to do.
Can I ask you, what did Vic say to you? Because what did Vic think?
Well, I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of what Vic said, but I can tell you this. Through every step, she's been with me.
Yeah.
The good, the bad, the challenging, the great moments, the victory nights, the really low moments when somebody tried to burn our house down, our family house, when my brother died. The last few months, which have not been easy, but she's been there at my side every step of the way. And so that's why we had to take the decision together.
And when you walk out of the door for the final time on Monday, how do you think you're going to feel? Is it going to be relief, pride, sadness, a big cocktail of emotion?
I go with pride. I go knowing that I leave the country in a better state than I found it, and I go knowing I've left the foundation for Labour to win the next general election.
Yeah.
And I go out and I will immediately that afternoon spend time with Vic and the kids, and I look forward to that.
So my final question is, as you hand on the baton, you believe that you set Andy Burnham up to win the next general election, and part of the next phase of this administration's success is your success? I
hope so. We've built the foundation for this now, and Labour can go on and win that election. I think we'll go on and win that election. I'm proud to hand over the party in good shape to Andy Burnham, hand over the country in good shape to Andy Burnham. I will support him all the way. I'll give advice if it's asked for, and I'll give it privately. I will not give advice if it's not asked for, and I certainly won't give it publicly. I will give my full support, and that is what I mean. I want my country to thrive, and I'm sure it'll be a great success going forward.
To the World Cup now, and there are calls for FIFA to take action against Argentina after its players brandished a banner about the Falkland Islands. It was after their win against England last night. Several players were seen waving a banner that supported their country's claim to the islands. Well, the UK government has weighed in, saying the World Cup might not be ours, but the Falkland Islands definitely are. Our international correspondent, John Sparks, has more.
First, it was the football. Now it's geopolitics. England and Argentina, the Falklands or the Malvinas. Controversy off and on the pitch. So what's going on? Just minutes after Argentina won 2-1 against England at the World Cup semi-final, Argentinian players grasped this simple black and white banner. It reads, Las Malvinas son Argentinas, or the Falklands are Argentinian. It's that running sore, the sovereignty of the islands bursting out into the open again. The Falklands are a self-governing British overseas territory, home to 4,000 people, some 8,000 miles away from the UK, or 300 miles off the coast of Argentina. It's a beautiful, windswept place with white sandy beaches and millions of penguins and deposits of oil that companies are now beginning to exploit. But these islands have attracted controversy for years. The Falklands have been under British control since 1833, something that's been long contested. In 1982, Argentina launched a military invasion. A bloody 74-day conflict would follow. 655 Argentinian and 255 British servicemen lost their lives. The conflict ended with the surrender of Argentina's forces in the capital, Stanley. But the country has never relinquished its claim. In 2013, Falkland Islanders voted to remain a British territory, with just 3 people voting against it. The poll used by the UK to assert its sovereignty. But that's never really satisfied Argentinian politicians. Just before the big match, the country's vice president called England usurping pirates and told the football team to claim what's ours. The Argentinian president, Javier Milei, has also been talking about the islands as he implements painful economic reforms at home. But the fact is, the ownership of the Malvinas is part of Argentinian culture. It's a cause, a seeming injustice, and we shouldn't be surprised to see it referenced by players and fans alike. So, could Argentina ultimately be punished by FIFA over the banner? FIFA strictly prohibits political messaging at its matches. Back in 2014, Argentina were fined £20,000 after its players held up a banner with a similar message. But any sanction won't come until after the tournament is done. The islands are part of Argentina's psyche, and the debate is constantly reignited by its politicians. And it's certainly not the last we've heard of it.
We're joined now by Simon Weston, a British Army veteran who served in the Falklands War. Simon, thanks so much for joining us this evening. I just wonder what went through your mind, honestly, when you saw that banner on the pitch?
I wondered what went through their mind picking up the banner and flagging it around. But then I thought, here we go again. This is them with their ever boring rhetoric that they keep trying to espouse. They keep trying to get other people to back them. But the fact is, if you look at history, the Argentinians have never, ever owned the islands. They've never lived on there. They've never worked them. The fact that we took it over from the French, but the French couldn't make it work. And then we took down a load of Scottish hill farmers who did make it work. And we've been there longer than anybody else has ever tried to be there. And we've made a success of it. But in your report just now, the hint was there. The fact that oil is present there, and because of Argentina's economic crises, which is what started the Falklands War 44 years ago, is the same as they have now. They have raging inflation, they have real problems, but what they want is to be able to exploit the oil. But what we can't guarantee is they'll do it decently.
And Simon, you know the cost of war than most people. What do you think the families of the 255 soldiers who lost their lives would have also gone through last night, seeing those images?
Well, I know some of them, and the messages I've had today and I've seen today, they're dismayed by it. They are distraught, some of them. People are very annoyed and upset because there is no need for this. There is no need for this public display. It's very immature to start with, the way they wave flags around like they have done. The politicians, look, just because they're politicians is no guarantee they're intellectual. And I've never been to a school that taught stupid, but clearly some people did go there. But the fact of the matter is that we are seeing people being bullied. We are seeing the Falkland Islanders being put under threat, made nervous because of their near neighbours, 400 miles off their coast, creating great stress. They call us pirates. They're the only ones who've taken ships off the high seas. They're the only ones who've impounded fishing vessels and supply ships. They've done all that, not anybody else. So, you know, they really ought to look to their own laurels and realise they're the ones, the hypocrites, who are actually doing things to hurt people. But then again, they're the ones who invaded 44 years ago. You know, they're the ones who started that, not us.
So you must have spent some time since you saw those images thinking about what should happen next. Of course, FIFA say political messages in the game have no place. Is a fine enough for what we saw yesterday night?
I don't think so now, because let's face it, £20,000 when they had a professionally made banner which said the exact same thing. £20,000, well, that wouldn't buy Lionel Messi's breakfast. You know, he's that rich. Every player on that field is a multi-millionaire. So, you know, I'm not objecting to their pay structure. What I'm saying is the fines wouldn't affect them, and the Argentinian government wouldn't care. They'd probably pay it happily if they can continue to get the publicity they're getting. But what should be looked at is some better sanction. This is not the only time they've sung the songs in the changing room, which they've then put on social media. They've even got history of having the former field hockey captain for the Olympics, doing press-ups and stretches on the war memorials. So the disrespect is there. And unless we can find a way that we can keep politics, which can be as grubby as anything as we've seen, if we can keep politics out of sport and let people just enjoy it and let children see good role models, because this is clearly not good role models for anybody's sake, to be disrespectful and to break the rules so flagrantly and to not really seem to be worried about any punishment. FIFA have to do something. They've laid the... We can't wear a poppy on our international jerseys because they say that's a political symbol, which we all know it isn't. But Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, America, Canada, the symbol was created in America many years ago. It's not political at all. And yet we can't put that on a football jersey, yet these people are getting away with all of this.
And just to wrap then, Simon, briefly, that final with Spain, all eyes are going to be on Argentina once again. What would be your message to the players on that day?
Be more respectful. I mean, there's two teams. Spain got sanctioned for their singing of songs about Gibraltar. So that's just recently happened. So they're two countries that are very aligned. They just have to be more respectful and obey the rules. Obey the rules of no politics brought into sport, and certainly no politics brought in to the world's biggest tournament, the world's biggest game, because it is wrong. It's just disrespectful and it's hurtful to a lot of people.
Simon, great pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you. Well, still to come on the UK tonight, Ofcom launches an investigation into whether TikTok is failing to protect children from harmful content. And then also ahead, an inquest into the death of 14-year-old Jules Sweeney is to be reopened. We'll be speaking to his mum, Ellen Room. And experts recommend the NHS should offer 15-year-olds a vaccine against meningitis B. Ofcom has launched an investigation into whether TikTok is failing to protect children from harmful content. The regulator will examine whether the app is complying with elements of the Online Safety Act, and comes after a review found TikTok was failing to take steps to safeguard children despite overwhelming evidence of harm. Our science and technology reporter Mickey Carroll explains.
This is how TikTok guesses your age. Now, to you and I, it might just look like using TikTok, but to the social media giant, it's known as age inference. New rules have been in place for a year, meaning that platforms hosting any type of adult or harmful content have to have highly effective age verification in place. According to Ofcom, that means things like AI facial age estimation, where an AI guesses your age based on a selfie, or ID checks like you get when you're buying alcohol. It doesn't include age inference, which is what TikTok's been using to tell how old its users are. TikTok looks at what you're doing on its platform and then guesses your age based on that. So if you're on TikTok and you're scrolling past a lot of videos that are to do with weddings or house renovations, for example, videos that might be more interesting to an older user, but you're watching and sharing a lot of videos that are to do with something like school life, for example, it'll start to assume that you are younger, that you're a younger user. It'll also take into account who you're interacting with. That, according to Ofcom, isn't good enough, and the regulator says it's seriously worried about what children might be seeing on the social media platform and has now launched an investigation into the company.
We have real serious concerns about whether children are accessing content they shouldn't be accessing on TikTok. This is a very innovative space. Services can use all sorts of things, but things like facial age estimation is now really, really good. That is an effective method. Obviously, using ID is effective. But in that list, we did not include age inference. Right. And we have questions.
Campaigning groups have welcomed the investigation, with the Molly Rose Foundation saying it hopes it addresses the so-called tsunami of harmful content on TikTok. But for this mother, it's too late. Ellen Room's son, Jules, is thought to have died when he attempted a dangerous challenge he found on TikTok in 2022, something the company disputes. Extreme challenges are classed as harmful content by Ofcom and would have been age-gated if these rules were in place before Jules died.
I understand that TikTok look at what activity they're doing on their platform, which they then guess at the child's age. If they've got harmful material on their platform, they need to do more to protect children from seeing that. If it was a product in any other area, it would be their responsibility to remove it and fix it. Technology companies need to step up and fix their products.
TikTok's responded to the investigation by Ofcom and told Sky News, "We strictly enforce age-appropriate experiences through expert-informed platform rules and advanced age inference technologies in line with major industry peers. In the 8 years since TikTok launched in the UK, we've invested billions in platform safety. We're confident that we meet our Online Safety Act obligations and will work with Ofcom to demonstrate this." What happens next could make children safer on TikTok. But for parents like Ellen, it may feel too little, too late. Mickey Carroll, Sky News.
Well, you heard in Mickey's report there from Ellen Room. Ellen's 14-year-old son, Jules, died in 2022 in what she believes was an online challenge that went wrong. Well, after a long campaign from Ellen, an inquest into Jules's death will now be reopened after its original conclusion was quashed at the High Court today. I'm really pleased to say Ellen joins us now. How are you feeling today, Ellen?
Exhausted. Exhausted but delighted. I've fought a long time to get this, and I'm so pleased that we now get the chance to look for answers.
And I remember the original inquest into Jules's death. It lasted 23 minutes and heard no live evidence. When you heard those words from the judge that it was being reopened, that must have hit you like a ton of bricks. Tell us how you felt.
It did, and I felt incredibly emotional. I was surrounded by other bereaved parents, friends that I have met through this journey, and they all also want answers to their children, and I just wanted to turn around and hug them all. It was such an important moment and so powerful, and setting a precedence for all the other parents that want answers. Although I started this journey wanting answers for Jules, it became a bigger picture. It became fighting for all these other parents that desperately want answers for their children. And for me, you know, to try for answers and to open the door for other parents to also try is just phenomenal. I'm so grateful.
And Jules, Ellen, just take us through the timeline then for what happens next.
So my understanding is that a coroner is instructed at Gloucester Coroner's Court, which is where we had the first inquest, and then we have asked for a preliminary hearing to set out what we want to achieve, and then we go from there to allow the coroner to then request that information via Ofcom to the social media companies to demand that information is released.
And just for everyone who's watching, hearing this story potentially for the first time, tell us about Jules. He was your beautiful 14-year-old baby. What did he love? And what would he think, more importantly, of you, mum, today, making such a cracking breakthrough?
Do you know, Jules and I used to have this thing where we would pinky promise each other to tell the truth. And I was sitting in court and I have this inner dialogue sometimes with Jules I was sitting there thinking, come on, Jules, like, is this going to work? And I had this little voice in my head saying, I pinky promise, Mum, you got this. And I was so passionate. Like, I was just thinking, is that in my head, or I don't know. I just really want answers, and I may never get the answers, but I just want to try to understand why my precious, amazing, beautiful 14-year-old is not alive. And today we get that chance, which I'm so grateful for.
Yeah, and I suppose that's what's really important, isn't it? It's having an answer, and it may spin off into something being uncovered that's new. You would have heard today of Ofcom investigating TikTok. You would have also heard about the curfews on social media, midnight to 6 a.m. When you hear all of this, how does it make you feel as a person who's lost someone?
I fought all the way along for my Jules Law campaign so that when a child dies, now their data is automatically preserved, which is amazing. But we need to stop children dying in the first place. We have to step up and stop technology companies feeding children harmful data. And the government is doing more to do this. They do need to still do more. And I hope when the next Prime Minister comes in next week that they step up and actually do more to protect children online. We have to stop children dying and being harmed in the first place. It's too late to wait for a child dies to request his data. We need to do more, and so much more before, to protect these children.
Ella, what keeps you going? I mean, I can't imagine taking on a fight like this.
It's really hard. I've lost everything in my life. My precious boy is not here, and today was a massive success, but it's never going to bring Jules back. But my fight now is to make a difference for the other children in this world. It has been for the last few years, and it will continue to be. And until we make changes and actually really stop things happening, I will continue this fight. I'm going to do this to protect other children. I don't have any other children to protect, but I can make a difference for the other children in this world.
And while we've got you here, Ellen, as we're talking on telly, there'll be teenagers up and down the land, in their bedrooms, on devices. What would be your advice to parents who are really struggling with social media and devices?
I understand it's a really hard argument. I know so many people that have arguments with their children about coming off the device and, getting outside, doing things. I would just keep going, please keep fighting, because the last thing I ever want is any other parent to be in my position. And, we know now, back in 2022 when Jules died, we didn't know the harm on these platforms. We do now. So just keep having that argument. It is not worth losing a child over, and keep trying to get your children off these devices. And social media companies, step up and do something. Make a difference. It's your product. You fix it.
Ellen, you're an inspiration. And if I could give you a hug in person right now, I would. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And just in response to Ellen's campaign, TikTok said it didn't oppose the bid to reopen the inquest, with Anthony Jones from the social media firm saying that it could certainly see the force in a bid for a new inquest. We'll keep a watch on that story, of course, for you. Still to come. On the UK tonight, experts recommend the NHS should offer 15-year-olds a vaccine against meningitis B. We'll have those details. And audio recordings reveal Henry Novak's murderer, Vikram Digwa, confessed to his brother that he had stabbed the teenager multiple times. Government advisors are recommending that all teenagers from the age of 15 should be offered a free meningitis B booster vaccine. It follows concerns over an outbreak in Kent earlier this year in which 2 people died. We're joined now by the Chief Executive of Meningitis Now, Dr. Tom Nutt. Great to have you with us this evening. You've been campaigning for this for years, Dr. Nutt. I wonder how significant is this move for you today?
Well, I think this is a really significant move, potentially. We have to remember that this is just a recommendation that's being made to government. Over the coming weeks and months, we hope that the health ministers will listen and act on the advice of the JCVI, the experts, as you say. But no, this is great news. I mean, it also comes in the week when we've had a one-off programme of Men V vaccinations rolled out as well. So we're really pleased. Vaccinations save lives, and that's really, really important.
And it's an important point you make, because if ministers approve this, the first round of boosters, they won't begin until, 2030. Mm-hmm. Is that soon enough from your perspective, do you think?
Well, I think this is where there is some detail in what the JCVI have said. So the JCVI are recommending a booster programme, to be in place by 2030, which is when teenagers who would have had that Men V vaccination originally as babies, so from 2015 onwards, they would then be able to access this booster, and that would give them the immunity they need to get through those at-risk years at university. But the JCVI are also saying to government that the government should strongly consider thinking about vaccinating other teenagers in the interim. And we would absolutely endorse that. They've done it as a one-off programme this year, which is incredible. We're talking about young adults in the prime of their lives, putting themselves into situations where they are more likely to be spreading the bacteria that causes disease. And this is not a message about people needing to panic. It's simply a message about people being aware that there is a vaccine that can prevent disease. And it's really important that the NHS makes it available and that people take up that vaccine.
And the really tricky thing around meningitis is those early symptoms, those early days can look like a cold or a flu. So specifically, what should parents and young people be looking out for?
Yes, as you say, the early signs and symptoms of meningitis are easily confused with something like cold or flu or a hangover. It can be things like vomiting, headache, confusion, a fever, perhaps with cold hands and cold feet. As the disease then progresses, you do then get, what you might think of as the more classic signs and symptoms, perhaps a stiff neck or an aversion to bright lights. And in some, but very much not all cases, there may be a rash that appears on the skin that doesn't disappear under pressure, such as when you roll a glass over it. But really what you're looking out for is someone who's unwell and deteriorating rapidly. And of course, it's in those situations that you need to seek urgent medical help, either by calling 111 or, if you think it's an emergency, 999.
And the other side of this, even with vaccine programmes available, getting young people or teenagers to come forward for the vaccine sometimes can be tricky. So the communication around this is vital.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important that people know that the vaccine is safe and that it's effective. Unfortunately, we're living in an age where there is lots of misinformation out there, flying around on social media in the digital world. And so, for any people out there watching this evening, whether, you're a young person yourself or a parent of a young person, I think, we can offer you the reassurance that these vaccines are effective. They're not 100% effective at reducing disease, so you still always need to be aware that there is the possibility that you could still get meningitis, and there are different strains of the disease that you need different vaccines for. But yes, this is a vaccine that could save your life. And, if you've seen about what happened in Kent and more recently in Reading, the devastation this disease can cause, in terms of loss of life, or indeed leaving people with lifelong after effects. This is a disease that can cause amputations, the need for amputations. It can cause brain injury, sensory impairment, as well as all sorts of emotional and psychological harm. So, for the sake of a couple of doses of vaccination, I think it's well worth protecting a young and a precious life.
Really good to talk, Dr. Tom Nutt there from Meningitis Now. We're going to move on to another story this evening, and audio recordings have revealed Vikram Digwa, who was jailed for life for the murder of Henry Novak, confessed to his brother that he had stabbed the teenager multiple times. Now, the pair were speaking in Punjabi as they were driven in the back of a police van last December. Well, our correspondent Amjan Pibikos is here. Just explain to us, Amjan, good evening, what the recordings reveal.
So the Crown Prosecution Service have released a transcript of the conversation between the two brothers in the back of a police van as they were being driven once they'd been arrested. And during the conversation, Vikram confessed to his brother that he had stabbed Henry Novak multiple occasions, and he actually expressed where. So he said in the transcript, it says that he's hit him on his shoulder, in his face and on his chest. And it was very open about that in the conversation with his brother in Punjabi, as you say, but the transcript has been translated. And during the conversation between the two brothers, the other brother, Gurpreet, has said, you should have just hit him or you should have just beaten him. You shouldn't have taken that action. And Vikram's response was, I was a fool, an idiot. And so there's an admission there of guilt. The conversation also talks about the response of their parents and their involvement of their parents and the impact on their parents. And there's a lot of reference to God and how have we ended up in this situation. And they do actually do a prayer together in Punjabi in the back of that police van. But definitely an admission from Vikram with his brother in that moment after they'd been arrested.
OK, Anjum, thank you for the update. Really appreciate that. Still to come on the UK tonight. Every newborn baby in England is set to be screened for SMA. This is following a campaign by singer Jessie Nelson. We'll have the details for you. And also coming up in sport, we'll have the latest on Thomas Tuchel's future after England were knocked out of the World Cup.
I bet right now you often find yourself asking why. Why was a certain decision taken? Why did something happen? Why did they say or do that? I'm Neil Patterson, and it's my job as a journalist to find out why. Just explain why.
It's a difficult one.
Well, I mean, it's massive.
It's a very, very severe situation.
So if you want to make sense of this complicated world, Sky News' new podcast, This Is Why, is your daily fix. One story every day, and we can find out why together. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
Mayhem in the Middle East, rippling in America's West.
Get back! Get back!
The resolve of these protesters is now being seriously tested. I saw police being forced or pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
None of this is a peaceful protest.
I'm Martha Kellner, and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. How are you feeling?
I am angry. It is an anti-woman agenda.
Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support, but it's nasty out there.
Anybody else?
Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from? From the UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
President Biden, do you trust President Xi? President Biden says that this meeting went well. He said real progress was made on a whole host of issues. Will your candidates win?
I hope so. I think they will. I think they're great candidates.
There's no doubt that Kamala Harris and her team are harnessing the power of social media. Do you think Kamala is brat?
Kamala's brat.
Are you scared?
Yeah, we were scared. It was terrible. Strong wind, building tearing down.
As them say, our God works, so we can't do nothing.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. Sky News, get the full story first. Free wherever you get your news. Ghislaine Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges against her. Mum, how are you feeling today?
Jeffrey said, you answer to Ghislaine, you just don't cross her.
The Department of Health has announced that all newborn babies in England will be tested for spinal muscular atrophy, also known as SMA, from the end of this year. So SMA, it's a rare condition which causes progressive muscle waste and can leave babies unable to sit up, to crawl or to walk. Singer Jessie Nelson brought the condition into the national spotlight when she announced that her twins had been diagnosed with the condition at the start of the year. My colleague Sarah Jane spoke to Jessie about the campaign. That was back in January.
It never should have took for me to come along for it to be taken seriously, and that's the part that makes me feel so angry, because it's like, this isn't just anything. This is the matter of life or death for someone's child, or, you know, the ability of whether they're going to be able to walk or be in a wheelchair, or if they're going to be able to breathe properly or feed properly. It's like, who gets to decide that? Like, who has the right to decide whether my child is going to be in a wheelchair or not, when we've literally had 3 life-changing treatments since 2018, and the fact that it's still a thing and we're still having to scream and shout about it is just mad to me.
We are joined now by the Chief Executive of SMA UK, Giles Lomax. Giles, we saw Jessie there in January. She's spoken today about it being a day of hope. What does it mean to you, Giles, personally?
This is an absolutely historic and massive moment for the community. You know, we've been campaigning for screening to be added to the heel prick test for nearly 10 years now. So to hear the news today that England are officially going to be expanding that heel prick test past the original proposals. So the proposal was originally going to be starting in October this year, over a calendar year between October 26 and October 27, that would be 400,000 babies would be screened. So that's approximately 72% of the country. That additional news today now means that in October next year, a further 28% will be added, which means that every single baby as of next October will be screened for SMA. An absolutely incredible moment for all of us. We're really proud.
Oh, gosh, of course. I just wondered, for people who haven't heard about SMA before tonight, before this announcement, what does the condition do to babies?
Yeah, so SMA is a rare neuromuscular condition, and what it's really characterised by the loss of motor function across the whole body. So babies that have a type 1 condition, which is what Jessie Nelson's twins have, would usually have really poor head control, neck control, floppy, low muscle tone, difficulty breathing, difficulty feeding. So a really severe and complex health condition. What the screening program now does is that rather than symptoms appearing and children being symptomatic and coming to hospital with all of those descriptions that I gave, you're now actually being able to diagnose, treat way before any symptoms appear, and those children can now grow up to have completely normal development pathways. So a life with no complex healthcare condition needs whatsoever. So absolutely incredible.
And so for families who haven't had the screening, I mean, what are your thoughts with them today?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's an extremely amazing moment, but let's not get away from the fact that there are 2,000 people living in the UK with SMA, from children, young people and adults all the way through that spectrum. And it is too late for those people to benefit from the screening programme. But it is empowering to know that we've actually changed the future. You know, I have twins as well that have SMA type 2, so slightly less severe than Jessie's twins. But we have campaigned enough and shouted so loudly and worked so well with the government and with Jessie herself so that we can now change that direction completely. So it's a bittersweet moment. I think that's the best way to describe it, but super, super chuffed to have got it over the line.
And when this comes in to play, what will it mean, you know, for a parent who's had a test and it comes back as positive? What will that mean for a family?
Yeah, I mean, look, the diagnosis will still be devastating. It will be a devastating diagnosis, but the steps and the pathway and the strategy there is now in place. So what will happen is after 5 days, a baby's heel prick test is taken, and that blood sample will then be screened through specialist labs. If there is a positive result, a clinician will then speak with a parent within 48 hours, sit down with that parent, give that diagnosis journey. But then the most important part of that is have the strategy to provide treatment immediately before any of those symptoms appear, before any of that muscle wastage and damage occurs, and that action will then change that pathway that child's future will then look like in a very positive way.
Yeah, an amazing day for so many, Giles, thanks to your campaigning. Thanks for joining us.
Not a problem. Thanks for having us.
Well, listen, Jess is here with the sport. We've got the small matter of Thomas Tuchel to discover. I wonder what's going through his mind in that picture.
I can probably tell you, because there's been a lot of criticism levelled at him in recent hours after England's World Cup semi-final exit last night against Argentina. And he's come out swinging today. He's had some very explosive comments, some very hard-hitting comments, where he's questioned his players, he's questioned their DNA, and he says, actually, it wasn't my tactics, it wasn't my issue as to why the game was lost. It's down to the players. Let me read you these quotes, because I think you'll be surprised to the point that he's come out swinging. He says that in the moment, my feeling was there was no structure in the world that could have helped us. He's talking about the game last night. But I think right after the goal, the momentum swings completely and ball possession drops dramatically. We couldn't find any duels anymore. That's why we dropped deeper and deeper. It was never the plan, but it happened, he says. Now, this is the interesting part. I think ball possession plays then a crucial role. It's maybe not in our DNA like it is in Spanish DNA or Argentinian, Brazilian DNA to take the ball and control the game with the ball.
I mean, this all makes me feel like there's discontent in the camp because there needs to be unity. And at the moment, I'm feeling a bit uneasy. FIFA are backing him.
Yes.
But there's going to be a healing process that the team and the coach need to go through.
Clearly, and there's going to need to be some very honest and transparent conversations, I think, between head coach, coaching staff and players. But, I mean, I think it's very easy for everyone to lay blame at the head coach, Thomas Tuchel. I feel as though perhaps the players need to take some responsibility. There were some very experienced, very high-quality players on that pitch during that match. The likes of Harry Kane, very experienced. Jordan Pickford in goal, very experienced. John Stones as well. They would have known that keeping possession was key to England keeping hold of that lead. They weren't able to do that. Is that down to Thomas Tuchel? Partly, but I think some blame probably does lay with the players as well. But don't forget, Leah, they've still got another game to play. They're in the third, fourth playoff on Saturday against a very strong France side. So whatever issues they've got going on behind the scenes, they need to get that sorted very quickly. So whilst England and the speculation and conversation around them continues, it also continues in Formula One around Max Verstappen. More next.
The first time I drove a Formula One car was 1983, the end of the season, when McLaren decided to give three of us a chance in F1. And one was Stefan Bellof, the German driver who would become my teammate at Tyrrell the following year. The other was Ayrton Senna, who I'd had a massive fight with in the Formula 3 season. And of course, I was the third driver. And we got to drive this beautiful McLaren. It just felt incredibly fast, but we were at home. We all did very similar times, lap times. John Watson set the benchmark for us as the works McLaren driver at the time. And then somehow Ayrton Senna negotiated a second go and went a bit faster than us, which was quite interesting actually when I think about the years that were ahead of us. All three of us were in F1 the following season, so it went well. Last time you wish you were back in the car rather than behind the mic. Pretty much every Grand Prix, to be honest, but you have to
Oh, there'll be lots of people up and down the country feeling a bit blue after England's World Cup exit last night, and it seems the King is among them. Here he is reflecting the feelings of a nation at a brewery in Dorset.
That's quite enough, I think. There we are. Anyway. Maybe it's a good day to drown a few sorrows.
Oh, nothing a swift pint can't fix. Let's take a look at the weather.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Well, tomorrow looks mainly dry and very warm, locally hot, but heat wave conditions will become largely confined to the southwest this weekend. Expect another fine and warm evening overall, but many northern and eastern coasts will be rather dull and cool. The odd thundery downpour is possible in the southwest. Misty low cloud will move inland across many northern and eastern parts overnight, perhaps bringing some drizzle elsewhere. Fairly clear.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.